Hi everyone, welcome to another Practical Disciple video. I'm John Arnold if you haven't met me before. I'm very excited about today's video because I'm going to share with you the system I use in my prayer life to keep it vibrant and dynamic and growing and a real living connection with God every day to where I can see God at work in my life. So I call it the 5 pillars of prayer, and what I want to do in this video is walk you through each of the pillars and give you some concrete examples. I'm going to get real nuts and bolts in this today to where I think you're going to walk away with stuff that you can apply the minute the video is over the next time you pray and have a better prayer life for doing it. So if that sounds good to you, we'll just go ahead and dive right in. I will say this before I do though, and that is I'm going to talk to you at the end of this about an opportunity to really do some in-depth training in the 5 pillars of prayer if you want to go further than this video, or if you watch this in this video and go, hey, wow, I could see where that could be really helpful and I want to learn more. So stick around to the end of the video and I'll tell you how to get in on some really exciting training coming up. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. The first pillar of prayer is consistency. You know, prayer is really all about building your relationship with God. And like any other relationship, if you want to have a great relationship, you have to put in a certain amount of time to it and a certain quality of time. But even if you have really great quality of time, if you don't do it consistently enough, you're not going to grow in that relationship. It's kind of like working out your body. You know, I can join a gym, and that's awesome, start a relationship with a gym, but if I'm not getting in there regularly enough, I'm not going to see benefit of it. I'm not going to lose weight, I'm not going to put on muscle, I'm not going to grow in flexibility, and my health's going to pretty much stay where it is. And I find that a lot of people in their prayer life, and I've definitely been in this space myself before, are hit and miss with when they're connecting with God. And when you're hit and miss in connecting with God, the relationship's going to be kind of stagnated at a status quo. So the very first step to improving our prayer lives is to make sure that we're consistently getting into meaningful conversation with God, if you will. And you do that at first by developing a daily devotional that you can stick to. And I emphasize that you can stick to because a lot of people get excited after going on a retreat or something, or having some mountaintop experience, or hearing a sermon, whatever, and they're like, man, I need to pray more. And they just jump in, they start praying more, and then they kind of fizzle out on it as a routine. I call my daily devotional time my sacred routine. It's sacred in that it is time set apart for God. And so what that word sacred means, for something to be holy, it is set apart for God. And it's routine in that I always come back to it, and it's there as a base and a foundation for the rest of my relationship with God and for my life of discipleship. So the best way to do that is to build a rock-solid daily devotional time. And I'm going to give you 2 tips for sticking with that daily devotional time that you can apply as soon as you get done with this video. The first is this: if you haven't already done it, set a time and a place for when you'll have your daily devotional. I mean, that just makes sense. We schedule the things that are most important to us. And what could be more important than spending time with God? It should be the foundation from what everything else flows in your life. So you want to schedule it. And as simple as that may seem, it's incredibly effective at helping you be consistent. I do on my blog a Bible study with folks that's a year-long course where we run through the Bible. After 30 days, I survey participants as to whether or not they are still doing their Bible reading and whether or not they picked a time and a place for when and where they would do it when they started out. Now get this, for every person who has set a time and a place to do that, who's continuing to read, there are 5 people who didn't set a time and place and they've stopped reading within 30 days. I mean, that's almost insane the amount of difference it made for those folks in terms of just Bible reading. You're 5 times more likely to stick with a daily devotional if you just schedule a time and a place to do it. That's an easy decision, and you can do it within 2 minutes of getting off of this video. The other piece, I want to give you a second tip for being consistent, is to take your daily devotional time and link it to an activity that's already a habit or a routine. So for instance, if in the morning, you're habitual about rising up, brushing your teeth, getting a shower, throwing on your clothes, having a bite of breakfast before you go out the door, maybe working out, take your daily devotional time and anchor it to one of those items. Tell yourself, make a commitment to, I'm not going to have breakfast unless I've had my daily devotional time. So I will always do my daily devotional time before I have my breakfast. And if you link this new habit to an existing habit, you will succeed over most people in being consistent with it. And that pays off big dividends over the long haul. All right, let's keep this video moving because I want to walk through all 5 of these. The next piece that is really important is focus. Just as I mentioned a moment ago, if we're going to go into a gym, we'd have to go in there regularly. When we went in there, we would have to have a certain intensity to our exercise and stay on track with it for us to see any results. If I go in there and I do a few sets of benches, and then I get distracted and I go talk to somebody for a while, and then I go do another set, and then I wander off and get something to drink and, film a magazine or something. If that's how I lead my workouts, I'm probably not going to see a whole lot of gains out of it, am I? No, because we don't have the amount of focus and intensity that we need to have there. We need focus within our relationship with God as well. And I have found this is the absolute #1 biggest struggle that people have with prayer. Just last week, I surveyed about 15 folks, broke them into 3 small groups, and independent of one another, all 3 of those groups came up with a wandering mind as one of their biggest struggles that they have during prayer. And I've found that within the last 5 to 10 years, this has just gotten epidemic. And it probably shouldn't be surprising to us. We get conditioned every day to be constantly interruptible through cell phones and text messages and tweets and all that stuff. It's constantly flooding to us, and we're constantly knee-jerk reacting to it. Is it any wonder that when we go to pray, we struggle with having focus? Now, all of that said, while that is the #1 struggle people have, it's also probably the easiest struggle to fix. Because really, having focus boils down to consciously making some choices to engage our mind and to engage our body in prayer. And there are dozens of ways that you can do both of those things. Let me give you an example for just one example for each of those things that you can apply when you get off the video. The first is this. Engaging your mind, a simple way to do that is to pick a prayer method and use that kind of as an agenda for your time with God when you're in your prayer time. Probably a lot of you watching this video have had the dismal experience of sitting in a run-on meeting that didn't go anywhere because you walked into it and nobody had an agenda for the meeting. And that is really a frustrating experience, to go in and just to be scattered and all over the map because nobody knew what you were about when you got together. You bring into that meeting an agenda, and you pull people's attention back to that agenda over and over again. Within a handful of meetings, you'll have a very different group and a very different relationship with that group. They'll know they're there for that purpose, and they will begin to self-regulate it and stay on task. Our minds will do the same thing. If we give them an agenda for our time with God, that agenda will be a roadmap that constantly keeps us heading in the direction we want to go in our time with God. Here's one example of a very popular prayer method that I've used a lot in my own life, and that is the ACTS prayer. ACTS stands for A, adoration, C, confession, T, thanksgiving, and S, supplication. So adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. And if you decide that's what you're going to do while you're in your prayer time, what happens is if your mind starts to wander off, that agenda kind of quietly pulls you back into the presence of God and keeps you focused and directed. So that's one example of beginning to train your mind back into focus and having a concrete tool to keep you engaged. In terms of the mind. Now, in terms of the body, again, there are dozens of ways to do this, but probably the simplest and quickest one to apply is to simply pick up a pencil and start writing out your prayers. Even if you don't write out complete sentences, you just write bullet points, but you keep writing as things are coming to you as you're praying, you are tremendously more likely to stay present to God during that time and stay focused on prayer than if you do not physically engage yourself through the process of writing. Again, that's just one way we can do it. There's dozens of ways, but I would kind of challenge you to try that out. Take and write out an Acts prayer when you get done with this video and tell me how that's different from, say, sitting down and just, I'm going to pray now and seeing what happens. Radically different experiences in terms of focus and how meaningful that time is for you. All right, let's keep moving because we still got 3 more. I'm going to hit 2, and I want to be sure you get tips on all of these. So the third one that's really important and critical to a growing relationship with God and a growing prayer life is what I call breadth. I also refer to this as let's get past please and thank you. When I survey groups, again, about struggling with prayer, a common complaint I hear, a common struggle I hear is I really feel like my relationship with God is kind of one-sided. I feel guilty about the fact that I'm really bad about only coming to God when I need things and then thanking God later. And then when things are good, I kind of back away from the relationship and God doesn't hear from me again until I'm struggling and I need Him. Consciously working on broadening your prayer life will get you out of that please and thank you mode, and you'll have a much healthier, happier relationship with God. I call this expanding my prayer vocabulary. I'll give you just one really easy way to do that, and that is to imitate the prayers of really great prayers. When I was in high school and graduated, the Christian Education Committee in our church bought me a copy of a little book called The Diary of Private Prayer by John Bailey. Now, this is a classic. It's been around for decades. The language in it is a little bit dated and archaic because it has been around for decades. But it's an awesome little devotional guide because what it does is it has on one page a morning prayer, and then the facing page is blank, and then it has a page with an evening prayer, and then again a facing page that's blank. And I would take that little devotional guide, I would read John Bailey's prayer for the day, and then I would write in my own words on the facing page my version of that. Well, what I found was that John Bailey prayed about, like all kinds of things I would never dream of praying about. I just wouldn't think about it. And it really stretched me, and I found myself enjoying prayer more because it was about more than what it had been in the past. It encompassed a greater portion of my life and the lives of the people around me. And all I did to get to that place was I took someone else's prayers and I tried to pray those same kind of prayers in my own words. So that's just one concrete way you can broaden your prayer life. But again, there's lots of ways we can do that. Okay. Just as important as breadth, or even more important maybe, is depth of relationship. And when I say depth of relationship, I mean 2 things. One is maturity, and the other is intimacy. Maturity, let me kind of paint a picture of that. Probably if you have parents, you've either been through this. Even if you're not a parent, you've seen this happen. You've seen a little child in line at a grocery store tugging and hollering at their parent because they want something. and whining and complaining further, going, "Mommy, Mommy, I want a candy bar. Please let me get a candy bar." Mom's trying to go, rationalize or reason with them. "Oh, you can't have a candy bar. We're about to have dinner." "No," I said, "no," and it just escalates. That's a really immature way of interacting. I used to do that when I was a little kid, I'm sure. I don't real consciously remember it, but I was a kid, and I've watched kid after kid do that, so I assume I did too. If I were to call my parents today needing help and wanting something, that is not what I would do. Why? Because I've matured and we have a deeper relationship, a more mature relationship of respect. And I would come to them maybe asking for their help, probably asking more for their guidance than anything else. And as we grow in our relationship with God, we're going to see that happen as well. There's going to be a shift in what we'll come to God with and how we will come to God with that. I mentioned part of depth is intimacy. And this is one I want to give you a real concrete way you can work at intimacy. A year and a half ago, I committed for 40 days to spend a chunk of prayer time, about 20 minutes, where I did nothing but praise God. It was about pure adoration. It was all about God. That little experience completely redefined my relationship with God in terms of the intimacy that I had with God. The sense of understanding of who God was, a sense of God's presence in my life, it just drove it through the ceiling. And here's exactly what I did. I would start out with the words, "I love you, Lord." And then after I told God I love you, I would tell God who God was to me. "God, you are amazing. You're majestic. You're powerful. You're forgiving. You're compassionate." And I would just pour out to God my heart in terms of who I saw God to be. And then I would shift and I would pour out my heart in terms of what I saw God do. I would say, "God, you forgave me. While I was yet a sinner, you died for me. You have entered into my life at times when I desperately needed you and delivered me out of some really difficult circumstances." And then I just go on. And it may not even be about personally what I've experienced. Sometimes it's what I've seen God do in other people's lives, or what I've seen God do scripturally. And taking time like that to say, "I love you. This is who you are to me. This is what I've seen you do," that will, unlike anything else I've found, tighten up your intimacy with God. If you don't believe me, I would challenge you to try it out with God, but you can also try it out with a person. What I mean by that is you can look to your spouse or your children or someone who's significant to you and tell them, "I love you. This is who you are to me. This is what I've seen you do. This is why I love you." And I guarantee you, if you do that on a regular basis, you will have a very different relationship with that person. And it's true for God as well. So there you go. Practical tip on that. Got to keep moving down to the last one, and that is integration. At the very beginning, way back up here at number 1, consistency, I said it all begins with the daily devotional. But that time that is separated out from everything else should not stay separated out in a box. Your prayer should be a preparation for and a celebration of the rest of life. So prayer shouldn't stay bottled up over here. Prayer should begin to spill out and inform your life, and your life should inform your prayer. In my book, Tips on Prayer, Quick Start Guide for Improving Your Life, I made the statement, if prayer's not changing your life, then it's time to change your prayer. Well, that is very, very true. And one of the ways we do that is we integrate prayer throughout our day. We also take our prayer time, as I mentioned a moment ago, as a preparation for the day. Here's my one practical tip around this that I'll give you before we go. And that is, when I get near the end of my prayer time, I always take some time and I reflect back on kind of what's gone through my mind as I was praying. And I look for and commit to something that I feel God is calling me to do during the day. And I call this my gift. And that's an acronym for Godly Intention for Today. I choose a godly intention for the day. For example, I might do something very specific, like I might go, hey, Joanne's been really sick lately and you haven't heard from her for a couple days. I think it'd be a good thing for you to get a hold of her and check on her and extend a little bit of loving care and grace her direction. She could use it right now. That may be a gift, godly intention for today, that comes out of my prayer. It might be something more general, like, for example, during my prayer time, I include scripture reading in my prayer time. During my prayer time, maybe I've read something about gossip or that's kind of popped up for me. Then my godly intention for the day may be, God, today, if I get in a situation where someone starts wanting to talk about somebody else and pull me into that, I'm going to resist. I'm going to back out of that conversation politely, or I'm going to redirect the conversation into something that's more productive. So there you have it. That's just a quick example for each one of these ways I apply them in my life. On every single one of them, there are dozens of tools like the ones I've lifted up today. And I want to take time in an online training that I'm going to launch in just a couple days to do exactly that. The online training is going to be a series of 5 calls where with each call we dig deep into the 5 pillars of prayer. Take one a call. If you're at all interested in doing this, then there should be a box somewhere below this on screen. Put your email address in there. I'll make sure you get notified. But this is kind of what it's going to look like. The very first call, I'm going to step by step show you how to put together a daily devotional time that you can stick with, and that's going to incorporate some of these other elements so that you'll be deepening your connection with God and you'll be growing your awareness and ability to see God at work in your daily life. And then I'll give you all the tips you need to make that stick so that you can be consistent with it. We're going to work on focus. Right now, you may struggle to literally keep praying for 2 minutes. Don't beat yourself up. That's not at all unusual. But again, it's one of the easiest problems to fix. And we'll take a whole call, a whole webinar where we're going to take and we'll dissect how to stay focused. And I'll give you a whole lot more tools for engaging the mind and the body. And it would be nothing for you with a little bit of practice to be able to spend 30 peaceful, purposeful, uninterrupted minutes of prayer with God. And wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, certainly beats your mind jumping all over the place and being in and out for 5 minutes and then getting frustrated and giving up. When we get to this call on depth, I'm going to walk through an 8-fold pattern of how we learn and grow in really anything, but I'm going to apply it to prayer, and I'm also going to talk to you about some concrete strategies for building intimacy, like the formula of praise that I shared with you just a moment ago. And lastly, we're going to do our best in the last webinar, the last call, to try to take prayer outside of the box of your daily devotional time. And hopefully we take some steps toward praying without ceasing, as Paul mentions in the Bible. So if you've got this sense of, I really feel like my prayer life could be at a different level, and the kind of tools that John shared today are, those are things that I could do, and you want to go deeper with it than I did today, then please put your name down in or put your email address in that box below so that I can give you notification as soon as the seats open up. Now, just a few more words about the training, and then I'll wrap this up and we'll be done. This is going to be a very small group. I'm going to keep it tight intentionally. I'm going to cap the number of people that can be at this because I want to be able to be responsive. I want this to be highly interactive. You'll be able to ask questions. It's going to be live training. There's going to be a community element of it where you'll have a page you can go to and you can post what's going on, what you're working on. You can post problems or questions you have, and people will be able to respond, and I'll respond to those as well. As I mentioned, it's going to be a small group, and I'm capping the number of seats. I got to tell you, right now, a lot of those seats are already taken, because I've invited some of my mentors and my prayer partners into this process because I want their wisdom as we're going along. They'll be listening in and they'll be able to chime in and either correct me on things or enriching the experience by throwing in thoughts that they have or experiences they have with prayer. So you're going to benefit from more than just what I've learned about prayer over the last 20 plus years, but some of my core mentors will be in on this, and you'll be learning from them as well. So that said, that means there's going to be very few seats. It's going to be very time intensive on my part. And because of that, I am going to charge for this training. I've never done that before on my blog. I'm going to charge for my book, obviously, but I've never offered any training that I've charged for. But it's going to be a big commitment on my part. And truth be told, I really only want people to opt into this experience if they're pretty committed, if they're invested in working on their prayer life. This is not for somebody who's casually interested. Now, I will say that I've discovered that the 5 pillars of prayer they're ideal for people who are brand new in prayer because of the kind of hand-holding I do through the process, and it's a step-by-step process. And if you have no clue to begin with prayer, you're going to walk away with like a master's course under your belt on how to get moving. And I've also found, as people have read my book, Tips on Prayer, and got introduced to the 5 pillars of prayer, the people who are real veterans of prayer, they're finding that there are tools in there that I've never exposed them to. But more importantly, they love the fact that it's a complete system that they can turn to, and they can diagnose where they are right now, and they can pick areas to do targeted work on, and I have exactly the tools they need to do that targeted work and to remove all the guesswork around how to move forward. So again, place your name, place your email address in the box below, and I hope this has really been a blessing to you. I will, as I said, be charging for this training. That's to be fair to me. It's to be fair to you and to make sure that you're really invested in the process. I'll have more about that in a couple days here. I've got to work out just a few little technical issues to be able to host the course. But once I've done that, I'm going to open up the remaining seats for anyone who's interested, and I'll explain to you how to register and be a part of that process in a couple days here. So again, hope this has been a blessing, and I really hope that I'll see you in that training. If not, I look forward to seeing you in another video by The Practical Disciple. Bye now.